Hey guys, so with this episode, what I want to talk to you about is Twitter. This will probably end up being like a 2 or 3 part thing, but I'm going to start with some really basic stuff. So bear with me if you're, a little bit more in the know when it comes to Twitter, because I'll get to the more technical, in-depth stuff in a minute. I wanted to start out with a thing that a lot of people used to do wrong, and thankfully people have caught on now. It's just when you use the @ when you're adding somebody, say @Rihanna or whatever, and you start off your sentence, your tweet with @Rihanna, you got to put that little period, just a period in front of the @. Otherwise, if you don't do that and you just @Rihanna, you're literally doing that. You're talking directly to Rihanna. The world won't see your tweet. It'll just be directly to Rihanna. It's not a direct message, but you're sending it just to her. It's intended for her eyes only. So put that period in front of the @, and that way it becomes a public tweet. It's something for everyone to see. All right, moving on past that, another thing is verification. If you can, try to get verified, because unlike Instagram or Facebook, there's really a lot of benefits on Twitter once you're verified. Now, if you're in some type of media job, you could usually submit for that, or sometimes it happens organically if you get enough followers and Twitter catches on. But you want to get verified because it increases your chances of being seen by famous people. So if you're talking to Mark Cuban or whoever you want to see a tweet potentially, they could click on the tab verified, and it weeds out like the people who aren't verified with the people who are. So it definitely increases your chances of being seen, and then hopefully them retweeting that tweet or following you back or getting back to you. That way you could start some direct messages with them. So it really helps out when you're just increasing the visibility of your tweets. Another thing I want to talk about, and this is a tool and a trick that I use all the time, and it comes in really handy when you're trying to grow your audience on Twitter. It's tagging accounts. And you can only tag accounts when you use a photo. So a picture is more beneficial than a GIF or not putting anything in there, because you can tag. And what I'm talking about when I say tag is you put in a photo. Say I'm talking about Snoop Dogg, and I want to use a photo of Snoop Dogg. I click on the little photo icon and I put in the picture that I want. And then it asks you who's in this picture. And you can not only tag Snoop Dogg, but you could tag any fan accounts that Snoop Dogg has. It's just directly telling these people that, hey, I'm talking about you, or this is content that you might like. So it increases your chances of them retweeting that. And anytime you could tap into these fan bases, whether it's somebody like Kelly Clarkson or, people that are fans of Steven Spielberg or Star Wars or whatever it may be, you tag these fan accounts, and you also tag the verified accounts for Star Wars or whoever it may be. It's really letting these people know that, hey, I'm talking about some content that you might like. So it's a good way to at least get a few retweets. And then the good thing is with these fan base accounts, their followers will see, and you really get a lot of good traction that way. And then they might end up following you. And of course, when you tag a verified account, whether it's Snoop Dogg, Martha Stewart, Steven Spielberg, whoever it may be, you're increasing your chances of them seeing it as well. The other thing about tagging, say you're talking about one of these famous people, I'll use Beyonce as an example. If you're tagging Beyonce, then would you @ her in the tweet as well? No, you wouldn't, because you already tagged her in it. So what might be a little bit more beneficial to you is using a hashtag, doing hashtag Beyonce in the tweet, because then you're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're adding Beyonce in the tag, so she'll be aware of it if she somehow happens to see that Beyonce's not necessarily a person that retweets a lot, but you're adding her, so she'll see that. And then you're using the hashtag, so people who are fans of Beyonce, when they search the hashtag Beyonce, your tweet will come up. So that's kind of when to use an @ and when to use a hashtag. There's different reasons to use them. So even if you take out the tagging portion and you're just using a GIF or just sending out a tweet without an image or a video or anything like that, ideally you want to use both the hashtag and the @ because you want the artist or the famous famous person or the business, whoever it may be, to know that you're tweeting about them. And then you also want to use the hashtag because, again, it goes to increasing visibility. The more people who are interested in Whole Foods or Beyonce or whatever you're tweeting about, the easier it is for them to find the content that you're pushing out, the more retweets you'll get and the more traction you'll get off that tweet. So even if I'm adding Beyonce, I want to also use the Beyonce hashtag somewhere in the tweet if I can. Something else I do, if I know after using Twitter a while, you kind of know, I'm specifically involved in music. I know what musicians tend to retweet a lot and what musicians don't. So if there's a musician like, who's somebody that doesn't retweet a lot? Beyonce, really, I keep using Beyonce, but she doesn't retweet a lot. So for me, really, I'm more concerned in tapping into her fan base because I know she won't retweet. So I don't really, if I'm just using a tweet without tagging ability, so there's no picture, just a GIF or just a text tweet, I'll use the hashtag Beyonce and not at Beyonce, because adding Beyonce is it's a lost cause. She's not gonna retweet it. Even if she does end up seeing it, she's not gonna retweet it. So you really are just going after her fan base. That's how you wanna get the traction there, get that tweet retweeted and seen by people. There's other artists and people that, retweet a lot. Like I know Lipton retweets a lot, Dunkin' Donuts at times retweets a lot. So then knowing that, you wanna use that at, so hopefully you could get the retweet from them. You use the hashtag as well. That might be an added bonus, like period at Dunkin' Donuts. Thank you so much for sending me these gift cards. It's been a really wonderful treat. America runs on hashtag Dunkin' Donuts. So there you're using both kind of. Let's move on and talk about kind of managing your numbers on Twitter. You want to download some kind of app. There's a lot of free ones, and it lets you know who you're following, who's following you back, who isn't following you, who's unfollowed you. And this tool is so important. It just lets you manage your account. And when you're first building up these numbers, I wouldn't get too worried about like how many people I'm following in comparison to how many followers you have, because it's like that saying, you have to spend money to get money. And it's the same with following people. You have to follow people to get followers. So initially, if you're neck and neck with who you're following and your followers, I wouldn't worry about that, because over time, based on the content you're putting out and whether you're manipulating the system and using Twitter the right way, eventually you'll have more followers than people you're following. You want to use one of these apps where it's like, follow, unfollow. It shows you kind of just the numbers and who's following you and who's unfollowed you, because that way if you're following somebody and they've unfollowed you, you can be aware of that and unfollow them. And it's a numbers game. It ends up being a good tool, so you could manage that over time. You could also see who's not that active on there and then make the decision whether or not you want to unfollow them or whatever. But I mean, I use that tool all the time. Now it's a little tougher because I do have so many followers on there. A lot of these apps don't, once you get to a certain number, they can't hold that much data or whatever, so you can't use it. Retweeting your own tweets. I know this sounds odd, but it's actually a really cool trick and helps you, because once you've sent out a tweet, say a couple days ago, I sent out a tweet and it did pretty well. I got 100 retweets or whatever. The thing with Twitter, because it's constantly moving, if people aren't looking at it really at that moment, they can miss your tweet. So by retweeting your tweet, it's pretty much the same thing as just sending out the same tweet again, but you're retweeting your tweet. So then you already have all those tweets in there, all those retweets, excuse me, and then you're retweeting it so people are seeing it again, and then you're adding on to those retweets that you already had. And then afterwards, obviously, you could send out the same tweet again in a week or whatever it may be. But retweeting your own tweets is basically reintroducing that tweet to a whole new audience or people that might have missed it the first time around. That's pretty much all I want to jump into for this episode. Like I said, we'll get into a part 2 of Twitter because there's even more stuff we can talk about. But I feel like that's a good starting point for people who are trying to build up that audience. If you do all that stuff, also real quick before we wrap up, if you use things like TweetDeck or Hootsuite or Social News Desk, stuff like that, where you could schedule tweets ahead, that's really great too, because when the holidays are coming up and you don't want to be on Twitter nonstop, you could schedule these things, and that way you don't go dark. You create the smoke and mirrors and the facade that you're always on Twitter. And people have such short attention spans. You don't want them to unfollow you because they think you're inactive. So, you know, creating that idea that you're always on Twitter, you want to do that. You want to have a presence on there at all times. But we'll talk more about this stuff in the second episode. So thanks so much for checking this out.